We all have imposter syndrome. All of us do. That's just who we are. But at the end of the day, people are going to judge you in the first 10 seconds of meeting you, and it's usually not what you say. And so I tell people, I'm not going to say fake it till you make it, but I'll walk in a room like I own the place, whether I do or not, because I want to show that I'm confident in who I am.
Welcome to the Seismic Shift podcast, where we explore the shifts that are shaking up the way that we work and the way that we live. And thank you so much to Loyola University New Orleans for their generous support. I am so excited today to introduce to you the one and the only Chantell Preston is in the house. Give it up. Hi, Chantell.
Hey, Michelle. Thanks so much for having me here today. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for all of our listeners tuning in to learn from you. Chantell is a serial entrepreneur who's based in Texas, and she's in the healthcare space, and she has absolutely crushed it. And in addition, the reason why I know Chantell is because she has this super cool podcast that doesn't just explore how to crush it in business. It's called Get Real, Get Results, but it also talks about how to have balance in your life. And so we're going to explore Chantell's journey first. We're going to explore her advice for all leaders, her advice for female leaders, and then how we can have it all, or maybe that's a myth. So let's start. Chantell, what is your story? Tell us, how in the world did you get to this level? Because you're extremely successful. How did you get here?
I'll just say, Michelle, sometimes ignorance is bliss. Okay. I'll just start with that. Straight out of school, I got the opportunity of a lifetime to work for a smaller company. So, usually it's either you're going to a big company and you start at the bottom. I was fortunate enough to start with a smaller company halfway to the top. It was an amazing opportunity. We build ambulatory surgery centers. And to be honest, I didn't even know what that meant, but I said, sure, I'll take a risk. It was probably the start of the most amazing career I could have ever asked for. I tell people I've never worked a day in my life because I absolutely love what I do and what I've been doing. But it gave me the opportunity to learn an industry that I knew nothing about. I got in there, and instead of like some of my peers that just sat behind their desks, I got out and I wanted to learn every aspect about the business. I felt like I couldn't represent and or sell what we were doing to physicians if I didn't understand how we operated. So I chose to find some mentors and said, just teach me. I became a sponge. And the reason that's so significant is from there, I kind of made a niche for myself. I never had to look for a job after that because I was known as the individual that could go out and develop healthcare facilities from concept to operations. So I got an opportunity to go out on my own at 27, had some clients that said, why are you working for other companies? Come work for us, just be a consultant. I thought, great, this is the life I've always wanted. But then you start to realize, what? Maybe there's more to life than sitting at the pool and acting like I'm really busy. I wanted to build something. And, as most of us, I didn't feel secure enough to do it on my own because I was still, my early 30s. I found a business partner. We started a company called Atlantic Health Group. We were going to be a surgery center company. And then we decided, hey, it's a saturated market. I already had all these clients. So we just continued down that path. Well, about a year in, we had a gentleman come to us and said, I've got a great idea for an organization doing traumatic brain injury rehab. Honestly, I had no idea what that was, but we said, sure, we got a couple, nickels to rub together. So we went down that path. We grew that organization. We had multiple levels of our company. I continued to do the development, so we didn't have to raise big dollars. We wanted to bootstrap everything. We ended up selling to private equity in 2015. So again, it was a dream come true. We made a lot of mistakes, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of those throughout this time, but it was just a great opportunity for us. And throughout my path, I was able to invest in a lot of the companies that I was developing as a client. Didn't get carried interest, but I put my money forth because I believed in what they were doing and really just built a portfolio of companies now that I interact with, and I really get to watch grow and do great things in the world.
Oh my gosh, I love that story. Wow. So at 27 is when you said, wow, I'm onto something. I've developed a niche market and now I need to figure it out. And I also love how you were honest, Chantell, like you were sitting by the pool saying, is this really what I want to do as the consultant? Maybe I want to build something bigger.
That's
And
right.
so then you pivoted towards that. And then it sounds like you grew a bunch of different businesses because you invested and you developed your own.
Yes, absolutely. And again, sometimes we don't know where paths are going to take us. If you would have asked me 25 years ago, would I be sitting here today? I'd say not in a million years. And some of the things, the lessons we learned along the way, sometimes we get bored, as entrepreneurs, we always like, oh, shiny penny, let's go do this, let's go do that. And those were some of the biggest mistakes we made. But the lessons that we learned help us get to the next phase. And so, the mindset was just very different. And again, as I said initially, ignorance is bliss. Sometimes you don't realize the risks you're taking and the repercussions. You just figure, oh, I'll bet on myself every day and twice on Saturday. So let's just go for it and see where things land. And we did some of that, which again, some ended up really well and some didn't.
Incredible. So I have this lens. I think that one of the seismic shifts is about connection, is that right now we need to go deep with connection, and we need as leaders to build our own cultures of connection to drive results. So can you share with us what you see are some of the seismic shifts happening right now?
Sure. I think, it's interesting where we started versus where we are now. I think not only does leadership have to change, but our workforce has changed. Okay. So there's been a huge seismic shift in regards to, who we're dealing with as our employees and what do they want. When I started my career and as, executive, I was really a top-down approach. We would tell them what to do, how to do it, go do it. Now it's very different. I took over one of my businesses in 2018 and we owned hospitals, and it was just a different experience. I realized I couldn't manage like I used to. I couldn't lead like that. I had to be a different leader. I was very standoffish. I'd never let people get close to me. I didn't care. Not that I didn't care. I didn't want to talk about your personal life. But now it's very different. The old days of title and money aren't the same as they are now. Now it's about purpose and belonging. And I tell people a lot, sometimes we're so focused on the outcome, we don't really enjoy the journey. And I think people today are more intentional about making sure that they're enjoying the journey, both personally and professionally.
Boom, mic drop. I could not agree with you more. That is exactly why I wrote my first book, The Seismic Shift in Leadership, because I was an executive coach and I was seeing that old command and control. I don't want to know about your personal life. I'm good, right? We're going to create an environment that is all about results, and achievement. And that was not working anymore. And people were leaving in droves. And then you threw in the pandemic. And then we had the Great Resignation, right? Saying, whoa, people are questioning, what am I doing? And you're absolutely right. I agree. I think it's about purpose and belonging now. And so so you saw also on the front line. So how do you recommend then that leaders pivot and they create, I'm calling it, we need to humanize workplaces, because we only have one workplace. We only have one calendar. We only have one life, right? And how do you balance and how do you create a culture that is more meaningful, that has purpose and belonging, that can see the whole person and not get, some people are scared like, oh gosh, I don't want to know too much. This is a workplace. I'm saying that no, this is our living space and we've got to be able to show up as full humans, because I think that's what the younger generation wants. It's a whole different, can you share your perspective?
Oh, sure. And I love having this conversation because you're right. We just, do your job, go home. There's no intermixing. First of all, the whole thing about work-life balance doesn't exist. Okay. We're now to the world of work-life integration. How do we integrate the two? Going through COVID as the CEO of a healthcare company, it was eye-opening. When I took on this organization, my previous partner, he just managed very differently than I did. I realized that I wanted to lead by example. I wanted to hear what people had to say. And again, not that his way was bad or good, it was just different. And I realized that I had to bring my culture and my community and my company together as one. And we were all under the same objectives, the same goals, and people want to be heard. I tell people all the time, 8 hours out of a day is a long time to be miserable, right? We got one life. And if you're miserable for that, I spent more time with my business partners and my employees than I did my own family. So why would I not want to be intricately involved in knowing them as a whole person? So some of the things that I was able to do is really focus on different things. Transparency was number one. We used to live in a world where we didn't share what financial, statements were. You didn't even know how to calculate your own KPIs. It was just about go, go, go. Whereas I think people need to take ownership and they want to be involved in the decisions at the company as a whole. I do a lot of strategic planning now, and it's fascinating because we'll talk about, well, who's going to establish the goals and objectives of the company? I think it needs to be everyone. Now, again, there's certain things that, again, every company needs, but why not let your staff establish how we're going to get to the initiatives that we create, right? They're the ones on the front line. I tell people all the time, I'm not the one working here every day. So you tell me how we could be more effective and more efficient. And so I think transparency, communication, you also have to build an environment that's safe for people to talk, safe for people to give ideas. One of the things that, again, I say to my staff when they come to me and I could tell something might have gone wrong, well, did anybody die? Well, no. Okay, well, then let's fix the problem. So let's talk through what's happened and how can we resolve the situation. I want to give them or empower them to make decisions, because how are they going to become the leader of tomorrow if they're not able to try things and make decisions in a safe and respectful environment? So I think transparency is key. Communication is key. I mean, again, we used to not tell anybody. Now we sit and we talk. We talk about, what we're trying to accomplish and everybody being on the same page. Used to everybody be in their own little silos, right? We didn't know what department over here was doing versus over here, but over here affects what happens here. Now it's like, let's communicate together and figure out, how does what you do impacts me and my bonuses and my EBITDA versus yours? So communication, and then collaboration and belonging. I mean, again, you said it earlier. How can we not get to know each other on a personal level when we're together so much? And when we feel like we belong, I mean, I think that that's innate in all of us. We just want to belong. When you belong in an organization, you're much more prideful. You want to do a good job. You want to put 110% in. I don't have to ask you because you're already motivated to do that. And then the last is just intentionality. I think times have changed. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, hey, my kid has a basketball game, I'd be like, no, we have a job to do. Now I'm like, hey, great, go do it. Because at the end of the day, most of this shit doesn't matter, right? And you're going to be much happier at home, which means you're going to be much happier at work. And again, you look at all the data, that's what makes employees great. And that's what makes organizations great, is meeting them where they are. So
oh my God.
That was a lot, but yes, you asked the questions and I'm giving you a response. But those are the things that I really think are important.
Oh, absolutely. And we speak the same language and are so aligned. You're absolutely right. So the book that I'm writing right now with my mentor, Marshall Goldsmith, one of the shifts I'm saying is we need to look at our connection cadence. And so who are the most important people personally and professionally that will allow us to reach our goals? And we have got to embed a way to interact with them that is different than before, not just showing up in your best suit in a corporate boardroom, proving your results with a PowerPoint or your worth with a PowerPoint presentation, right? That is not maybe the best way to connect. Can we go on connection walks? Can we, my question is, if I look at your calendar, can I tell what your priorities are and who your priorities are? Right. And so we've got to figure out a way, like you said, to incorporate your kid's basketball game in the afternoon so that you can be happier. And then I know and I trust that when the kids go to bed, you can hop on and you can finish your project. And so you have to trust the employees, right, in order to create this connection cadence with the things that are most important to them. So that's what I'm really advocating right now. And I think it creates a whole disruption of how you view the old of time management. I had this old time leader, this old school leader many years ago. And he just was a clock watcher. If you left 2 minutes early for lunch, you got pretty much like a demerit, and in 1 year he lost his entire team. And this wasn't that long ago. He was so old school that he had to manage. He thought it was effective to manage time. You can't do that anymore and retain employees, right?
No, and it's a slippery slope. I mean, as a leader, it's a slippery slope because people will take advantage of that. Don't get me wrong. Not everybody's great at it. they have to earn trust too. And I tell people that all the time. I had a recent situation, even myself went through, if I entrusted someone and I thought, hey, they're going to get the job done. And then I realized, no, they weren't, because they didn't have that self-motivation to be able to do that. So I think it's important for us to realize up front, what are we looking for? And to your point about a manager, in large organizations, I think we discount middle management a lot of how critically important they are, because they're your lifeline to the front line, right? And so if they're not happy and they don't understand what the organization's, culture is, that can be devastating, because you're losing your frontline employees without knowing what's happening. You want them to be voicing what you believe in and your values are as an organization. So yes, I mean, it's, again, ask me 10 years ago, to give you a whole different, I'm sure a lot of my staff that's been with me 10 plus years will tell you, I've morphed as a leader myself, as I've personally grown and realized that, there's more to life than just work. And the happier that you are at work, the happier you are at home, and vice versa. At the end of the day, it all pays off in regards to productivity.
Work-life integration. I love it. Absolutely. And so in all of my research on connection, here's what I've learned. And think about the last time that you felt really connected with somebody at work. You probably felt seen, heard, respected, and appreciated. So I think there are 4 dimensions of connection. And so we've got to think about our interactions with people. How can we interact in a way that they feel seen, heard, right, respected and appreciated? And it really is a going deeper, making sure that you have your one-on-one meetings. That's a perfect way to make sure that your people feel seen, heard. The example you gave of transparency, of sharing numbers. I run many leadership academies, and one of them recently is the head of finance, and said, we're just, in the last year, we were just told what our budget was. We didn't even know the numbers. Nobody shared it with us. Like you said, everybody worked in their silos, but how can you really work collaboratively if you don't even know? And how can you really feel like you have a sense of a bigger P, of a bigger purpose, if you don't even know what the budget is and what the goals are? So yeah, I think there are so many shifts here towards transparency, true collaboration, real connection, interacting differently when it comes to meetings and motivating your employees, and seeing that it is one calendar and how you can bring in all of the elements of your life to still be successful. I love all of that. So connection. So connection with self. You've had this incredible journey, this incredible story. Connection with others. You gave us excellent tips of how we can connect with each other more meaningfully. I want to hear about, you mentioned that maybe we'll talk about some of your slips. I don't like talking about failures. I mean, there are stumbles. We all stumble, right? What are some of the lessons that you learned that you kind of want to pay it forward? Like, oh man, like you had mentioned shiny objects. What are some of the lessons learned?
And I'm like you, I don't look at anything as a failure. I look at it as a life lesson of how can I improve? And I think that that's the wrong way of looking at things. Oh, I failed. If I didn't fail, I'm not trying hard enough. I'm not trying new things. And so, as I mentioned, we got to a place in our organization where we were doing really well, but we got bored. I mean, here you got a bunch of type A personalities. We got bored. And so we started going into industries that we weren't exactly knowledgeable about. And we thought, oh, well, how hard can it be? Well, let me tell you something. It's hard. It doesn't matter what it's in. I've got a great example for you. I'll just throw out there. I recently opened a dance studio. And I did this for my own selfish motives because my daughter's a dancer and we were going back and forth to LA. And I thought, oh, how hard can it be to run a dance studio, right? Oh my gosh, it's like every other business. It has the same headaches. It has the same concerns, staffing. So again, sometimes we think that things are easy because we already know how to do it or we can replicate over and over. That's not necessarily the case, jack of all trades, master of none. Sometimes that doesn't work well. And I think sometimes people think that. So that would be one thing, is stay in your lane, focus on what you want to achieve, and really put 110% into it, because that's at the end of the day going to give you the biggest value in return. My other thing is just active listening. There was a lot of times throughout my career in life that I didn't feel like I had time for other people. So I would never active listening. It was kind of half listening. I do this probably personally too. I think it's so important. Now you are the center of my attention. When we sit down, I am listening to what you're saying. I am asking questions. I want to hear what you have to say, both personally and professionally. I want to know what's going on in your life. Because again, it helps me build, kind of my own arsenal of how the best way to help you or how to make your job more effective or more, a happier scenario. So I think that we as leaders have to really start to actively listen. And I know there's a lot of people that are rolling their eyes like, I don't have any more time. I will tell you over the last 5 years, that was the best time I spent was taking that 5 to 10 minutes and just saying, tell me about your kids. How are things going? Because they feel like they belong. And again, I care. I do care. I just feel like if I cared too much, people wouldn't respect me. That's not true. We need to use our innate traits and qualities of who we are as people and let people see that. My big thing is women shouldn't show emotion in business. Well, I think that's wrong too. I think that we are better leaders, not necessarily all the time, but we are better leaders because we do have those innate traits of empathy, compassion. So again, why aren't we utilizing those? And frankly, the respect will come. I think that we used to think it didn't, but now it does. And that's what people want.
That's a wonderful pivot to, thank you. Excellent advice. Once again, Chantell, that's a great pivot to kind of moving to female leaders, right? I can't tell you how many times I have this fabulous former dean who believed in me when I was 29 years old and gave me a tenure track position at Loyola when I had complete imposter syndrome. I was like, I don't want to be a professor. I'm not supposed to be a professor. What am I doing? What? And I didn't see it myself, and he did. However, when he retired from Loyola, I said, what is one piece of advice you can give me? And he said, tone it down. And I thought, what? What? And I didn't ask a follow-up question. I didn't know what that meant. And I feel like my whole life, my work life, I've been trying to figure out, how do I tone this down? And then I finally figured out, Chantell, I can't. It just is. I have a lot of energy and you have to figure out how to harness that energy. My whole point in sharing that example is, I think, and that was, I've been at Loyola for 25 years. So that was 25 years ago when I was one of the very few women in business in a university setting. And so they were trying to put me in this little box and to behave more like the men. And so it's taken me years and years to finally say, no, I want to be me. I want to bring my femininity to work. I want to bring my emotions. I want to bring my enthusiasm, because those can be, not always, but they can be real superpowers.
No doubt. You're great parlay into my podcast. Some of the things that we talk about are the lies or the myths that we've been told our whole careers. Female, we have to say yes to everything. Well, why do I have to say yes to everything when you're not saying yes to everything? Because we want to be a team player. And then we have guilt if we don't. I mean, there's so many different things that we were taught that I'm hoping the next generations won't learn or can reframe those lies that we were told in some aspect. And you're absolutely correct. There was so many times where, living in a man's world of construction, I'd walk in the job site and maybe, hey, honey, go get me coffee, thinking I'm the secretary, realizing that, hey, I'm the owner. I had some great experiences with that. And so I tell women all the time, because I do hear the imposter syndrome. And look, we all have imposter syndrome. All of us do. That's just who we are. But at the end of the day, people are going to judge you in the first 10 seconds of meeting you. And it's usually not what you say. And so I tell people, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but I'll walk in a room like I own the place, whether I do or not, because I want to show that I'm confident in who I am. Now, I may not have all the answers, and it's okay. And I'll tell people, I don't have all the answers, but let me figure those things out. And so again, I think we have to be who we are and take what those awesome traits that we have and utilize them to our favor. And so I encourage women to do that all the time. Take everything that you learned as a kid and throw it out the window and start over. You can't have it all, at least not at the same time, right? People love to say, oh, I want it all. Do you? Because when I finally got it all, my world crumbled. So again, let's build our own truths of what success means to us, ourselves, not let society tell us what it is.
Oh, that's beautiful. Do you want to share a little bit more about, because I would love to know, you said you were at the top of the world and when you had it all, then everything crumbled.
Yeah. So after we had sold our company, or I was actually the day I was going to sign paperwork, my spouse called and said, hey, our relationship's over. So again, I thought here I was working so hard to give my family all of these things, given up so much of my kids' lives. I didn't even know what my 5-year-old ate for dinner, to get us to that point of financial success. Because in my mind, that's what having it all meant. Well, in the next year of my life was not roses and rainbows. It was sadness and loneliness because, again, my professional life was great, but my personal life was in complete shambles. My family was destroyed. So I go back to, I was so focused on the outcome, I didn't realize all the precious moments I was missing because I thought that success was financial. And so I just encourage people, define success for yourself. People say, oh, well, that's easy for you to say, you sort of, yes, but I would have given it all up to have not have, spent time with my family and my friends and attended events. I mean, all the things that I gave up that I thought weren't important at that time, as you get older, you realize how important those things are.
Thank you for sharing that story. You are absolutely right. And when I think about my daughter as a junior in college, what success is going to look like to her, I don't know. And I don't know why you and I were probably of similar age. I thought success also was, the promotion and achievement and the money that came with that for sure. However, I do remember choosing academia because I thought, oh, that's going to be a better career to raise a family, to raise a daughter and to have summers off and to be able to pick her up after school. And so you do have, life is full of trade-offs, right? And you can't have it all. And after my divorce, actually, is when I lifted my head up and I said, okay, it's time for me to go. Because I'd kind of, operated below the radar forever, very safe. I operated safe. What was best for the family? What was best for my husband at the time? And then I said, you know what? I've got some gifts. I'm so fortunate. Let's go. And my career took off after that. And I'd spent a lot of time figuring out what success looked like and how to manage that. So yeah, you and I have similar stories for sure. So what advice would you say going forward? I love the advice of figure out what success is to you. Again, that might be harder for some of the young people. Like, I don't know, I just need to make rent and be able to afford to live on my own. And, and sometimes again, we have these scripts in our head of we're supposed to get the next promotion and go bigger and do this in order to provide for the family. Chantell, I was just having this conversation Saturday night, watching all of the great college football games and our favorite little dive kind of restaurant. They have a brass band every Sunday around the corner from my house. I live in New Orleans, and that's happy hour. And then afterwards, the college football. And so all the neighbors, you bring your chairs and we all huddle together. And one of my neighbors was telling me a very similar story with an accounting firm. His goal was to make partner. And all of a sudden he lifted his head up and he thought, oh my gosh, what has happened? Because his wife was gone, lost custody of his children because he was so focused on making partner at all costs. So sometimes we think that's what success is, but I hope that the younger generation does listen in and tune into some of these podcasts so they can learn from us, right? That maybe success shouldn't be all of these things. So besides that, which was excellent, what other advice do you have for how to maintain? Because that's a lot of what I'm doing now too with this connection cadence is we have to figure out how to embed time for our family and friends because that's what sustains us. We are in an epidemic of disconnection and loneliness. We have to embed that into our rhythm, right? And at the same time, making sure that we're reaching our company goals and meeting with all of the people. How do you do that?
There's a couple of things that I've done over my journey. One is managing my own time. And I've learned that if you don't manage your own time, somebody else will. Meaning that every week I look on my calendar and say, okay, what of this stuff do I really not need to do? Because I'm the worst one. I like to help everyone. I want to, be there for everyone. But then I'm like, what about me? Why am I not taking care of myself first? And so I'll say yes to things and be like, oh gosh, I wished I wouldn't have done that. That's an hour of my life I'm never going to get back. So a few things is I'm starting to manage my own time, which I've done that for the past few years. But also when people ask me to do things, I say, let me check my schedule. Because I would immediately say yes and then regret it later. And I had to change my own mindset that my no is an opportunity for someone else. And that helped me justify and not feel guilty because, as women, we always have to feel guilty about everything too. That I'm doing someone else a favor by saying no, knowing that I can't devote the time and energy that this individual needs for something. So managing your own time and not saying yes to everything, I think is a huge component because I tell my kids, I try to never say, I'm proud of you, because I don't want them ever going after validation from someone else. I said, you should be proud of yourself, right? I think we look for validation elsewhere. I want my kids, and I have all daughters, to grow up in a world where they're self-validating themselves. So when they know what their value is, and they know when they say no to something, it's because they're putting themselves first. And I ask them all the time, why is someone else's happiness more important than yours? And I usually get a puzzled look. But to us that have been around for a while, we get it, because why is my happiness less important than someone else that I should be taking care of everybody else? So again, it's not an easy task. I mean, I haven't conquered all of those things. I don't want to act like I have, but I sure try to make sure that, as I'm looking at my time and where I'm going to spend my attention, I want things that it's like it's an investment in me and what I'm trying to achieve.
Oh my gosh, you give amazing advice. You really do, Chantell. And I had a similar situation this summer. I literally had been saying yes. I was so excited about this mission I was on to help leaders and help anybody create cultures of connection, because so many people were suffering. And I said yes to everything, and then was so empty and depleted this summer that I literally had to, actually Whitney and Blake were part of that. I said, y'all, I'm going away and I'm disconnecting until I can figure out how to restore, because I had said yes to everything. And what I learned then when I came back from my sabbatical is I have to own my calendar, because my calendar was owning me.
Well, and I'll give you a really quick one too, just a real drop the mic moment. My mother unexpectedly passed away in November. And I will tell you that the greatest thing I did for the last 10 years was spend as much time with her as I could and putting her first. And again, I wouldn't have done that previously in my life, but life is so precious. Sometimes we don't realize, what's on the horizon. And I wouldn't have been able to live with myself because it happened so quickly and there was no warning whatsoever. And we were so close. I would never have forgiven myself if I hadn't taken the time to spend with the people that I loved. And so again, I go back to managing your time and making sure you're filling your cup along with filling other people's cups.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I'm flying to Houston and taking you to lunch.
Come on. I would love to have you over here.
You're just a beautiful, beautiful human inside and out. Besides the success that you've achieved, you're just a beautiful human. And thank you so much for sharing your advice with us and all of the listeners of the Seismic Shift podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Can you see why I was so excited to have Chantell Preston on today's show? Thank you again, Chantell. Y'all take care. Thank you for joining us on the Seismic Shift. And before you go, can I ask one favor of you? Do you mind sharing today's episode with a leader you know? The power of this conversation is found in your using it and sharing it to create real connection in your life. Lastly, I'd like to thank Loyola University New Orleans and the Terra Firma audio team for helping bring this content to life.